everyone and welcome back to my bedroom. This week we are talking about Fielden English Rye Whiskey. This rather captivating looking little bottle with this, it's quite short, it's quite stout, reminds me of like an old pirate rum bottle where you pull the cork out with your teeth. This beautiful kind of sunset emblem on the front of it, very eye-catching. This is a 48% non-chill filtered product. It doesn't state anywhere on it, as far as I'm aware, about natural colour, but we do have non-chill filtered stated on the back. I'm just going to cover this glass up while we talk about it because there is quite a bit to talk about with this whiskey, so bear with me a second as I get my narration voice on. Upon discovering heritage grains in an old English thatched roof, or roofs, Fielden have used their Clover system to help farmers bring their fields back to life. Now what they mean by this is the Clover system is essentially, as they plant the grains to sprout again, they put an underlayer of clover, the plant, underneath it, which works as like a wonderful natural compost. So none of the grains and none of the fields which Fielden are using to use these heritage grains to distill their products, none of them contain any chemicals, none of them contain pesticides or anything like that. So it's all very natural and lovely and green and very welcoming to the environment. Overall, they have the ability to create 8 different mash bills. I don't know if they're available to try at the distillery, but literally today they've just launched a rye whiskey, which I think is purely matured in Madeira, a little bit more expensive than this one. By 2030, they aim to have a warehouse maturing 12,000 different casks, and they're going to have a fully automated location in Yorkshire, England, which is quite fun. The heritage grains that they focus on are rye, wheat and barley. Not too unusual, but heritage in the sense that they're relatively old strains. They're not necessarily the regular ones you'll come across in everyday distillation. The cask maturation is where this starts to get a little bit crazy. So they're using virgin American oak, used American oak, Sauternes wine, moscato wine casks, and Madeira wine casks. I believe the head distiller is of Portuguese descent, so he's really dipping into that, you know, especially Madeira and moscato, like fabulous fortified Portuguese wines. It is a distillate produced through both pot still and column still, which you can do in English whiskey. Filey Bay do it along with a few others too. And if there is a little QR code on the back of this which takes you to, hopefully that'll focus in, if not we'll see, there we go, kind of. That takes you to like a PDF breakdown of everything on this, which is where I've got most of this info from. Minimum maturation is 42 months or 3.5 years, and something which I've never seen stated on any other liquid I've ever bought before is they mention the marrying period of the liquids. So obviously they've got all these different things maturing in different casks and they marry them together for 93 days, which is quite a long time, you know, that's like nearly 4 months. But that is all the information you need on Fielden Rye. I have had a healthy chunk out of this bottle. I bought this about a month ago. What day is it today? It's like September the something today. September 17th today. So I must have bought this about a month ago, pretty much when I got back from Edinburgh. And it cost me £60. The new release they brought out today I think is a little bit more at 80. And I was just intrigued by it because it's a really high strength, relatively affordable rye in the grand scheme of rye, especially English rye. And every time I've sipped it, I've never necessarily enjoyed the start of the whiskey, but have loved the finish. But in the glass, you have this stunning, almost sherry cask influenced colour. But remember, we're dealing with Sauternes, moscato, Madeira, virgin oak, and refill American oak too. So that is a lot of cask influence. I would be amazed if that is not natural colour, but it doesn't state it necessarily on the bottle. Minimum maturation of 3.5 years. So they could just say 3.5 years, 42 months is a bit vague. But it's not vague, but 3.5 years is just easier to understand. But let's smell, let's taste, let's see what's going on. Okay, so it still smells the same. From glass 1 through to whichever glass this is, we have this, excuse me, as it's young, we do have this very rye new make spirit driven smell, which is to be expected. And that can sometimes be smelt as like cola cubes For some reason, new make spirit whiskey and cola cubes have this like crossover part. I think it must just be like an earthiness, especially with rye, and like a lemoniness, but you do get that, a little bit of that acetone grain note. But if you're used to this kind of spirit, that shouldn't be too unusual, so just kind of take that in your stride. Delving past that, we have this wonderful like peach, blackberry, kind of like creme caramel. They talk about flaky pastry a lot on their website, and I can't really disagree. It does have a very croissant pastry, custard sort of note. And you know, with Madeira, especially in the last couple of years where I've become quite occupied with certain distilleries and their use of Madeira, it does have this, it seems to morph Madeira. It can go from like really chocolatey to very toffeed to very raisiny, sometimes even quite tobacco-y. It's really unusual. There's none of the tobacco thing here, but there is that sort of sticky toffee note to it. I don't have that much experience with moscato wine, so apologies for that. I can't really pick anything out of there. It could be the peachiness, it could be the blackberryness. And then with Sauternes, we talked about Ardent American Sauternes about 2 weeks ago at this point, maybe 3 weeks ago. And you know, Sauternes is famous for those apricot-y, sugar syrup, marzipan notes, and you do get a little bit of that from this. You are smelling like equal cask influences across the board, so from a blending point of view, pretty well put together. Let's taste it. For a younger product, in the best way possible, this has quite a lot of attitude to it. It's a very attitude-driven whiskey, not only in the, you know, the heap of detail that is available on the website, but also the way it delivers flavour. So the first sip is very similar to the first smell. We have this youthful, earthy, green, of the land taste to it. I've also mentioned this when I talked about Waterford a couple of weeks ago too. There's almost like a petrichor, fresh, damp grass, misty morning sort of aroma to it with the spice of rye. It's really unique, and it's something that has been puzzling me about this whiskey for a while. Do I like this? Do I not? Is it too intense, like a flavour to start the flavour journey with? However, when you move on from that, all of those notes on the nose of flaky pastry and peach and caramel become so dominant. As soon as you get past that first bump, which could be an issue for people who don't necessarily like rye, that first flavour note, this thing just unloads on you with some of the most brilliant, like fresh pastry sweetness I've ever experienced in a whiskey, more so than what I've experienced with American rye, but we are also dealing with significantly more varied cask influences than a traditional American rye. So I'm going to dive in again. So yeah, earthy, spicy. You get this like reflux of very soily, groundy sort of smells and tastes. There's not too much happening on the palate. You do get this nice development of pepper and spice. It is 48% at relatively young age, so that's to be expected. But the finish on this thing is where it really comes alive. It's such a nice finish, and this is a really specific thing for British viewers. You may have them in America too, I don't know. But in the UK we have there's a range of chocolate called Galaxy. And it's just this really like super creamy milk chocolate. They make Galaxy Caramel, which is the outer shell is creamy milk chocolate and the inside is liquid caramel. That particular taste of liquid caramel is where this thing goes. And it's almost peppered with these notes of like peach skin and like blackberry juice, and there's even, much like the Glencadam last week, almost a strawberry, like a bright cleansing strawberry note to it. Could be power of persuasion in my own head, but now I've said that, I think of like the strawberry cream you get in some like Christmas style sweets, or chocolates I should say. it goes everywhere. And I must say, because I've made a lot of impulse purchases this year, and there's so many more to review as we get on into the year. This is one of the best. Like, it's not going to get the craziest, highest score in the world. It's going to be a relatively high score for something which is so young. But like, I'm going to give this a solid 8. I think this is more interesting than Glencadam I tried last week. I love that bottle. It's really fun. But this, it kind of just throws you all over the place and takes you to places you didn't really expect it to take you. And I think for a whiskey to do that is particularly impressive. So, you know, props to the team that have made this. I just love the bottle too. It just makes me want to do that. There's just something about this bottle that makes me think I'm on a pirate ship in like the 1700s or something. But yeah, you know, this gets a solid 8. It's really tasty. It's really fun. I haven't made any cocktails with it yet, but that'll probably change tonight. But if you're looking for something a little bit different, yes, it is a little more expensive than your American rye whiskies at £60 a bottle. But you are getting tons of cask influence, 48% ABV, no chill filtration, unsure about colour. We'll do that so you can see colour a little bit better. But you know, it is a first release, and much like the Isle of Harris release we reviewed last year, oh my god, that was last year, an okay whiskey, a lot of hype around it, but I thought it was just alright, but it was a good first step. It's a good foundation, you know. This is significantly more interesting in my book, but I am a rye fan, so maybe my bias leans into that a little bit more. But yeah, if you can sample this somewhere, please do, because it's very fun. I would highly recommend that you do. And next week, probably not next week, probably within the week, we will have a couple of more reviews coming out based on rum and tequila. I only own one tequila, but I'm in the process of buying more. I have a list, so we'll probably end up doing Whiskey Wednesday, or like Tequila Thursday, or Tequila Tuesday, can't really decide which one. And we've got loads of rum to review, like tons of rum. I just keep buying rum because it's so cheap in comparison to whiskey. So there's going to be loads of rum content coming out as well. But keep an eye out. If you click the little bell icon thing, you'll get notifications of new videos. But we'll be doing more than one video a week going forward. But yes, that's fun. But yeah, if you can try Fielden, I highly recommend it. Please do. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next week.